It's the 2026 edition of Sports Card Investing and Collecting for Beginners. If you're new to the sports card hobby or simply want to sharpen your skills, then this video is for you. Today, I'm going to give you all of the basics you need to know to become a successful sports card investor and collector. Hello, sports card investors and collectors, and welcome to Sports Card Investing and Collecting for Beginners. I'm very excited to do this video with you today because sports cards have been my life for the last several years. And I absolutely love cards, and I absolutely love teaching what I have learned along the way, including some hard lessons. And I'm going to be giving some of that to you today to get you started on your own journey. If you don't know me, my name is Geoff Wilson. I'm the founder of this YouTube channel, Sports Card Investor, also the founder of Market Movers, which we'll talk about later in the video. It is an app that helps you track the price of cards and track your collection, and also the founder of CardsHQ, this big card shop behind me here in Atlanta, Georgia, and hopefully more locations of this card shop opening across the nation soon. And between CardsHQ and myself personally, I have bought and sold more than $100 million in sports cards over the last several years. So I've got a lot of experience, not all good experience, some bad experience, a lot of great lessons to share your way, which we're going to be doing today. We're going to be covering the best sets, the best products, the brands, the manufacturers, how to buy and sell cards, how to find good deals, how to grade cards, the best cards for investment opportunities, and so much more. So let's jump in. The first thing I want to talk about today are the eras of sports cards. We're going to start with a little history lesson because it sets an important foundation for you investing or collecting in sports cards. Most of the video we're going to talk about today will be around ultra-modern cards. Ultra-modern is considered the era from 2017 through present. And most of the video is going to focus on that because chances are, if you're newer getting into sports cards, most of the cards you're seeing, buying, selling, most of those are likely from the ultra-modern era. In fact, they're probably from the last year or two. And if you come into a card shop like CardsHQ, a lot of the cards you're going to see on display, and most of the boxes that you might buy to open, they're probably all recent releases, meaning those releases are from the last several months. So all of those cards are going to be from this ultra-modern era. But before we start talking about cards in the present, let's go back to the past and let's talk about vintage cards. Vintage covers all cards that were manufactured prior to 1980. And in fact, vintage goes all the way back to the pre-war era, where you'll find, for example, the 1909 T206 Hannes Wagner card, considered by many to be the holy grail of trading cards because of its very limited production run. And when that card sells, it always commands millions of dollars. But there's a lot of famous vintage cards from that early to mid 1900s era, including the 1933 Gaudy Babe Ruth cards. There were 4 of those in that set. And the 1948 Leaf Jackie Robinson rookie card. A lot of collectors love that card as well. But you've got to go to 1952 to find the set that really changed the game and put sports cards on the map forever. It was the 1952 Topps set. This is the first time that Topps had ever produced a full-size set. And it was the first set to ever have a design that included bright photos of the players, team logos, and then statistics of the players on the back of the cards. Collectors loved that design, or at least they did over time. When the set first came out, believe it or not, 1952 Topps was not very popular, and they printed so much of it that they had to trash a lot of it. There's a whole famous story about how they actually dumped a lot of unopened cases in the ocean of 1952 Topps. But over time, card collecting really caught on, and then everyone started looking at that 1952 Topps set as the most iconic set that changed the game. And there's another reason why that one's so famous as well. The 1952 Topps set includes that 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card that many consider to be the greatest and most valuable sports card ever created. Now, interestingly, that's not actually Mickey Mantle's true rookie card. Mickey Mantle had a card the year before in 1951 Bowman, but his 1952 Topps is more valuable in part because of the design of the card and the importance of that 1952 Topps set. And only 3 of that 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card exist in the world in perfect PSA 10 condition. And it were believed that if any of those 3 copies were to sell today, they could command $50 million or more when they were to sell. Absolutely incredible. But it's not just baseball that had a lot of vintage cards. You could find vintage cards in other sports as well. For example, in football, the 1958 Topps Jim Brown card is a very iconic vintage card. In basketball, the 1961 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain card, very iconic. And in hockey, the 1979 O-Pee-Chee Wayne Gretzky rookie card, very iconic there as well. And of course, there's a lot of other, vintage cards from all sports that are super iconic. We're just touching on a few of them to lay the landscape here for you. Now, historically, vintage cards of all-time greats, like some of those I just mentioned, have been the safest and most profitable long-term sports card investment. But that doesn't mean that they are the only type of card worth investing in. We'll get more into that later in the video. Next, let's talk about the modern era of cards. The modern card era is typically defined as cards manufactured between 1980 and 2016. And here you will find Michael Jordan's 2 most important cards, his 1984 Star card and his 1986 Fleer card, both of which collectors consider to be his rookie card. The modern era also includes the iconic Ken Griffey Jr. 1989 Upper Deck rookie card, as well as Tom Brady's 2000 Playoff Contenders rookie ticket auto card, and Tiger Woods' 2001 SP Authentic autograph card. Plus, Lionel Messi's 2004 Mega Cracks rookie card. That one has been extremely popular as of late. And this modern era was a really important time during the progression of sports cards because a lot of innovation came into play during this era, particularly in the 1990s. The 1990s was the first time that we ever saw manufacturer inserted autographs in packs. In other words, before the 1990s, you could open up packs of cards, you would never find a player autograph card inside those packs. Those came along starting in 1990. And of course, today, those are a huge part of card collecting. Additionally, in the 1990s, the first cards that featured memorabilia put inside a sports card came along. Again, today, this is super important to card collecting. Many high-end cards have pieces of the player's jersey inside the card, but that concept didn't exist until the mid-1990s when they first came about. Even more importantly, the early 1990s brought us the first chromium stock cards ever. So today, when you're opening up a box of Topps Chrome or Panini Prism and you're seeing that nice chrome finish on the cards, those were invented in the early 1990s. The 1990s also brought us the first refractors and the first parallels ever. Today, refractors and parallels are super common and super sought after by collectors, but they were a brand new innovation back in the 1990s. So the 1990s and the modern era as a whole really changed the game for sports card collecting, and they impacted a lot of the cards that we now chase in today's ultra-modern era, which we're gonna talk about next. The sports card market has been booming for the last several years, and you can really see the number of sets being manufactured and the print runs of cards beginning to increase in 2017 to keep up with increasing demand. And this ushers in what we call the ultra-modern era of sports cards. Now, this era that we're currently in, the ultra-modern era, this era will forever be remembered by some of the innovation that has taken place around new types of cards. For example, you may have been drawn to this video because you may have heard in the news about these big dollars that some big chase cards are getting out of recently released sets. You might have heard, for example, about the rookie debut patch autographs that Topps introduced to Major League Baseball cards a few years ago, and soon they will exist in NBA cards and also NFL cards in the future as well. These are the most coveted one-of-one rookie cards of every one of these players, featuring a very special patch that they wore on their jersey during their debut game that was then taken and put into a sports card and then signed by the player. Or maybe you heard about the sky-high prices of gold Logo Man cards. These are cards that Topps recently introduced to the market that feature the award winners, such as the MVP winner in Major League Baseball and the NBA, and they feature a gold Logo Man patch, which those players actually wore on their jerseys the season after they were named as those award winners. Those patches went into trading cards and they can command some serious money. But when I think about the ultra-modern era of cards, I think about the explosion of parallels. Every time when you're ripping open a pack, you're going through trying to find the cards that look different from the others, that have a different color treatment or pattern to them, meaning a different parallel. And hopefully you find a rare version, one that maybe is serial numbered to a low number, because those often can be very valuable. And in addition to parallels, you're also looking for super short prints and case hit inserts and image variations. These have gotten extremely popular in recent years. Case hits include the coveted Panini Kaboom, Panini Color Blast, Panini Downtown, and Panini Stained Glass inserts. Collectors absolutely love chasing these. And Topps has their own short prints and inserts as well. They've got, for example, on the insert side, the All Aces and the All Kings, the Helix, and the Ultraviolet. Those have gained a lot of popularity recently as well. And then Topps is also known for having their image variations that are short prints, such as their Golden Mirror image variations or their SSP image variations, where they're using different images on the cards, and they only make a very limited run of the versions of those cards that are using the alternate images. So if you find one, it can sometimes be very, very rare and very, very valuable. Now, there have actually been some short prints and some inserts around for quite some time, but it's really in the ultra modern era, the last handful of years, that they have become the primary chases for many sports card collectors and investors. Also during this era of cards, we've seen the launch of Topps Now and Panini Instant Cards. These are on-demand card programs that allow Topps and Panini to print cards in reaction to an event that occurred perhaps even just yesterday. If something happened big yesterday, Topps may be releasing cards about that event today under their Topps Now or Panini Instant brand. So now that I've given you some background on the different eras of sports cards, let's talk about the manufacturers who make sports cards and the different sets that they create. But before I do that, let me get you set up real quick with a couple of really helpful apps and resources that are going to be important on your journey into sports cards. The first is completely free. It's our Sports Card Investor app. This is a great free app to get you started with pricing data and images of more than 5 million sports cards across all sports. Go grab this app right now. It's completely free. Just go to the App Store on your phone and search for Sports Card Investor. You're going to enjoy playing around with this app once this video is over. As you get a little more serious about expanding your sports card collection and doing some more buying and selling of cards, that's when you need to get the Market Movers app. The Market Movers app is our paid app that gives you pricing charts and detailed pricing history for every single card that has sold anywhere online over the last several years. You can download the Market Movers app by going to the App Store on your phone and searching Market Movers. Grab that app. You're going to find it really, really helpful to use alongside the free Sports Card Investor app. The final resource I want to tell you about is this book, Sports Card Collecting and Investing for Dummies. This is a book that I wrote along with two of my colleagues here at Sports Card Investor, and basically it expands on everything that I'm talking about during today's video. So if you find today's video helpful, you're probably going to find this book really helpful, and it's available for you to buy on Amazon or on CardsHQ.com. All right, let's jump in next and talk about the different companies that create cards, the sports card manufacturers. Now, the first thing you need to know about the sports card manufacturers is who creates licensed cards for each sport. Licensed meaning they can actually put the team logos on the cards. And this generally is very important for the long-term value of cards. And who has the licenses has been switching around quite a bit over the last couple of years. Currently, the licensed sports card market is dominated by three companies: Topps, Panini America, and Upper Deck. But even amongst those three companies, the licenses have recently shifted. So as of right now, Topps, which by the way is owned by Fanatics, Topps has the official license for Major League Baseball cards, and they've had that for many years. WWE cards, which they've gotten relatively recently. UFC cards, which they've gotten relatively recently. English Premier League soccer cards, which they've gotten relatively recently, and NBA cards. This is a big one. Topps just got the NBA license in October of 2025. So what that means is that prior to October of 2025, it was actually Panini America that was producing all of the NBA cards under brands like Panini Prism, which you probably have heard of before. But shifting last October of 2025, that license went from Panini America to Topps. So we had the first Topps Chrome NBA cards, for example, that were fully licensed come out in late 2025. And going forward, Topps is going to have that NBA license to go along with their Major League Baseball license and some of those other sports licenses for quite some time to come. Now, Panini America, even though they lost the NBA license, they still have the NFL license, but only for a brief period of this year, 2026. In April, the NFL license will shift from Panini America to Topps. So eventually, later this year, we'll get to the point where Topps is the only manufacturer that can create licensed Major League Baseball cards, NBA cards, and NFL cards. But at the very moment that I'm filming this video in early 2026, Topps is creating the Major League Baseball and NBA license cards, and Panini is creating the NFL license cards. Panini America also has the WNBA license, and they own the license to the FIFA World Cup. So when we see a bunch of World Cup cards come out later this year, those will all be Panini America cards. Upper Deck has the NHL license. So if you're into collecting or investing in hockey cards, you're going to be buying a lot of Upper Deck products. Now, sometimes you'll see these companies or other companies make unlicensed cards. So for example, even though Panini America doesn't have the license for Major League Baseball cards, they create unlicensed Major League Baseball cards. They'll still use some of their popular brands like Prism to create baseball sets. But if you look closely at those cards, they don't feature the team logos on them. They're known as unlicensed cards. Some people call these pajama cards for slang because they actually airbrush off the team logos off of the cards. And generally, these don't hold up as well in the secondary market over time. There's also companies including Wildcard and Leaf that make a lot of their business off of creating unlicensed cards of athletes. So there's a lot of companies that create those types of cards, but generally for long-term investing purposes, getting the licensed cards tends to be better. Now, these card manufacturers also create other types of cards, such as entertainment cards. Topps recently got the license to create Disney cards, and they've been creating Star Wars cards for the last few years. Leaf creates a lot of different entertainment card sets, and even Panini is in the entertainment card game with their creation of a Rolling Stones set recently, for example. So these card manufacturers are doing more than just sports cards, and it's fun to see all the different types of releases they come out with over the course of the year. But we're here to talk about sports cards. And next, let's talk about the many sets that these manufacturers come out with each year. Now, if you collected baseball cards back in the 1980s as a kid like I did, you might remember that there were 4 major sets that came out every year. There was Topps, there was Donruss, there was Fleer, and there was Upper Deck. And actually, all 4 of those brands still exist today. I've already mentioned Topps. They're the manufacturer of baseball cards and a lot of different types of cards. I've already mentioned Upper Deck. They're the manufacturer of hockey cards today, no longer doing baseball cards like they used to do. Donruss actually still exists, but now it is a set name, a brand name that is owned by Panini and put out by Panini every year. And Fleer actually is still around as well. It is owned by Upper Deck and not super active as of this point in time, but occasionally Upper Deck does sets that include throwback types of cards in brands in them as well. Collecting was simpler back in the 1980s when there were only those 4 major sets to contend with, because today there are dozens and dozens of different sets that come out each year in different shapes, sizes, and price points. And the easiest way to break them down is by sport. So let's jump into the different sports and talk about what the most popular sets are that you need to concentrate on for each of these sports for your investing and collecting journey. So let's start with baseball. If you're just getting started in baseball cards and you want a nice entry-level set to get in on, then you're going to be looking for Topps Series 1, Topps Series 2, and Topps Update. These are considered to be the flagship Topps sets, and they're made with paper stock, meaning they're not as expensive as a lot of the other Topps sets that come out over the course of the year. These come out at different points during the season, with Topps Series 1 being released before the season starts, and then Topps Series 2, and then eventually Topps Update being released later in the year. These are popular sets for collectors to get started with, but they're also highly produced, so they tend not to hold as much value over time. The most popular set for Major League Baseball collectors is Topps Chrome, and then Topps Chrome Update, which comes out later in the year. Now, this typically features the same design as the Topps paper flagship product, but it has a chromium finish, a better paper stock with a chrome look on the cards, and they're also more expensive. But when you open up a box of Topps Chrome, you've got a greater chance of finding parallels and refractors and autographs that many collectors love to chase. Now, baseball is unique in the fact that there are also cards that feature minor league prospects. In fact, there's entirely different sets that feature minor league prospects. And those sets that are most popular include Bowman, Bowman Draft, and Bowman Chrome. Prospecting plays a big role in baseball card collecting, as a lot of baseball card collectors prefer to have the first prospect card of a player rather than their Major League Baseball rookie card. And hopefully you find one of a player who becomes a superstar in the years ahead. Now, baseball also has a lot of really high-end sets that will make your jaw drop when you see how beautiful the cards are and what incredible pieces of memorabilia are put inside these cards. But these sets will also set you back thousands of dollars a box. And they include sets such as Topps Dynasty, Topps Diamond Icons, and Topps Transcendent. These cards deliver unbelievable autographs and game-used patches, and sometimes even cut autographs of historical figures and historical players like Babe Ruth. But they come at a very expensive price point. So while these cards are amazing to look at, you probably don't want to start your sports card journey by opening up a box of one of those sets. Now, it's worth noting that I just mentioned a few of the most popular baseball sets, but there are dozens of baseball sets that Topps puts out over the course of the year, and many of them are very, very popular with collectors. For example, Topps Heritage, Topps Finest, or Topps Cosmic Chrome. Very, very popular, as is Topps Triple Threads or Topps Tier 1, or many, many more. I could go on and on listing a bunch of different sets. I do recommend when you're starting out with card collecting that it's best to narrow your focus to just the most popular sets. The ones that I mentioned earlier, like for example, Topps Chrome Baseball is a great place to start because it is the most popular. So that allows you to really focus in and get cards that you know are going to be sought after by other collectors and that are going to be well recognized by other collectors. But once you get some experience under your belt, it's exciting to expand your horizons and to pay attention to all of the many different types of sets that are coming out each and every year. Now let's talk about football. Football is going to undergo a big transition later this year because, as I mentioned already, in April, the NFL license is going to move from Panini America to Topps. So you're going to see different sets coming out later in 2026 than you will see coming out in early 2026. But since I'm filming this in the beginning of 2026, the sets that you want to go after right now, from an entry-level perspective, the most popular inexpensive sets are Panini Donruss and Panini Score. These are both paper-based sets, much like Topps flagship in baseball, which makes the cards less expensive. You tend to get a lot of cards in a pack. Donruss is particularly important because it has that rated rookie symbol that people love and that may remind you of cards that you were chasing as a kid if you've been collecting cards for many, many years. Donruss is also where you find the downtown short print case hits that people love to chase after as well. Now, if you want to go up a level to the most popular sets of football cards, look no further than Panini Prism to start. Prism has been an absolutely iconic brand of chromium cards that Panini has put out both for football and for basketball for the last decade plus. And Panini Prism football cards are always super, super popular and sought after every year. But also popular is Panini Donruss Optic, Panini Select, and Panini Contenders. Those are all good sets to collect as well from a football perspective. And just like baseball, football has a lot of high-end sets as well. You can go up to Panini National Treasures and Panini Flawless, where you will find beautiful rookie patch auto cards of today's new bright young stars. Cards that can command thousands or tens of thousands of dollars when they hit auction in the secondary market. I also want to mention Panini Absolute, because that is where you will find the Kaboom short print case hit inserts for football, and a lot of people love chasing those Kaboom cards as well. And let's not forget about college products. Because you now have NIL, the card manufacturers can create licensed college products. And we saw that starting a few years ago when Topps came out with Bowman U Chrome and Bowman U Best. These products have become very, very popular amongst those who like collecting the college stars, or maybe those who are looking to find the first ever card of a player who will go on eventually to have a very successful NFL career. Now let's talk about basketball cards. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, the basketball card license shifted from Panini America to Topps in late 2025. And that means the sets of licensed cards are shifting as well. So prior to October of 2025, from an entry-level perspective, your most popular cards would have been NBA Hoops or Donruss, both of which were created by Panini America. But now it's Topps Flagship, because Topps Flagship, starting with the 2025-2026 season, had its own licensed set of basketball cards. The most popular cards, kind of the mid-tier of cards, historically for the last many years, has been Panini Prism for basketball cards. But now that has shifted to Topps Chrome. Topps Chrome came out in December of 2025, fully licensed for the first time in many, many years. Since Topps is now just newly creating these cards for the first time in quite a while, it remains to be seen what additional sets Topps comes out with in the months ahead that are going to gain popularity with card collectors. But chances are Topps will probably repeat a lot of the same brand names that they have used in baseball successfully in years past. So for example, when looking at the high end, I suspect we're going to get Topps Dynasty in basketball, just as we have Topps Dynasty in baseball. In previous years in the high end, Panini National Treasures and Panini Flawless dominated that landscape, much like they did in football as well. Other notable basketball sets to look for include Topps Finest, which is a popular set in baseball and likely will be coming to NBA cards as well in the future. And if you look back to the past, you had Panini Court Kings and Panini Noir. You also had Revolution and Crown Royale, which were popular Panini sets. Now, those won't be made licensed anymore, but if you're looking at sets from the previous years, those are sets that were popular amongst collectors. And basketball does have college cards as well. Just like football, you can get Bowman U Chrome basketball cards. These were really, really popular last season because those were Cooper Flagg's first cards ever, and he was featured there in a Duke uniform. Let's talk about hockey. Upper Deck has been the key manufacturer for hockey cards for many years now, and they will continue to be the manufacturer of hockey cards into the future. And when it comes to Upper Deck, everybody loves Upper Deck Series 1 and Series 2 because that is the product that has the Young Guns rookie cards in it. In hockey, people love collecting the Young Guns cards of their favorite rookies, and you can find those in Upper Deck Series 1 and Series 2. Another really popular rookie card in hockey is the SP Future Watch Auto cards. This is a higher end rookie card numbered to $9.99 with a player's autograph on the card, and you find those in a product called SP. There's also the Cup. The Cup is the ultra high-end set for hockey cards. This is similar to National Treasures or Flawless or a set like Diamond Icons in football or basketball or baseball. The Cup, beautiful, beautiful set. Definitely worth checking out if you ever get a chance, but it's going to set you back quite a bit of money because those boxes are deservedly very, very expensive. Let's talk about soccer. With the FIFA World Cup taking place this year, it probably will be a very hot year for soccer cards, and you're going to see a lot of releases of FIFA World Cup cards. And those will all come from Panini under Panini's brand names like Prism and Select, because Panini has the official license to create FIFA World Cup cards. But Topps, they can create the English Premier League cards. They have the official license to that. So expect to see Topps and Topps Chrome as an example when it comes to English Premier League cards. The different leagues, besides those, they all have different licensing agreements, some with Panini, some with Topps, some actually with both. So you'll see a wide variety of different sets and different types of cards depending on what league you like to collect in soccer. If you're into WWE or if you are into UFC, then those cards recently have moved from Panini to the Topps brand. So new releases of WWE and UFC, you're gonna look for sets like Topps Chrome and Topps Finest to find those cards. And the WNBA sits with Panini America. So you're gonna find brands such as WNBA Prism, which has gotten very, very popular in recent years, WNBA Donruss, and also a high-end product called WNBA Rookie Royalty, where Panini actually combines some of their high-end brands like Flawless and National Treasures into that one product. And as you can guess, those boxes become very pricey. So now that we've talked about the different sets of cards, let's talk about the types of cards that you can find inside every single one of those sets. Like brands and sets, individual cards are not all created equal. Within a single pack of cards, you'll likely find 2 or more different types of cards. Some are valuable and some aren't. And here are the key categories that you need to know before diving in. First, let's talk about base cards. These are the most basic cards without much fanfare. These traditionally hold the least value of all different types of cards, but key rookies are still always coveted even if they're in base cards. It's worth noting that the base card for most players is also among their most recognizable card because it's the most heavily printed, the most accessible, and therefore the most attainable by many collectors. Now, if you go back to the vintage era of cards, base cards were pretty much all you had. Inserts were pretty rare back then, and other types of cards like parallels and refractors hadn't been created yet. So those early sets were basically all base cards. But now base cards are simply part of a much larger offering that comes in each pack or box, and hopefully you'll find some other types of cards other than base cards in whatever you open. The next type of cards to look for are parallels or refractors, and these you're hoping to find because these can sometimes become very valuable. Now, parallels or refractors are typically the same design as the base card, but with a different color or different design pattern applied over top, or sometimes the image swapped out for a different image, even though the rest of the card looks the exact same. And these are typically more scarce or more rare than the base cards and therefore can be more valuable. Popular colors of refractors include the red, the blue, the green, and then of course the coveted one-of-one card. In Topps, the one-of-one is the Superfractor. And in Panini, the one-of-one is the black, or some variation of the black. Those are the cards that people absolutely get freaked out about when they find one in a pack. And then there's gold. Gold is typically one of the most coveted parallel colors that you can find. In Topps, gold cards are typically serial numbered to 50, meaning just 50 copies of that parallel of that card were ever created. And in Panini, gold is typically serial numbered to 10, meaning just 10 copies of that parallel of that card were ever created, making them extremely rare and often extremely valuable. In addition to parallels with different colors, you can also find parallels with different design patterns, which are also popular. For example, in Panini products, you'll find Mojo and Shock as 2 different design parallels that people like to collect. In Topps products, you'll find different lava refractors and different mini diamond refractors, which put a different finish over top of the card, giving it a different design look, and it is a parallel of the base card. And like the color variation parallels, these design variation parallels are also often short printed or serial numbered, making them much more rare and valuable than simple base cards as well. There are also image variations where the manufacturer takes the photo on a base card and swaps it out for another photo, but they only make a very limited print run of the version of the card with the swapped out photo. So the image variation version of the card, which sometimes can make those cards very sought after and very valuable as well. With so many different parallels or variations of each card possible, it can sometimes be difficult to know which ones you're chasing, or if you get one, which parallel or variation that you have. And that's where that Sports Card Investor app that I told you about earlier can come in really helpful. Because within the free Sports Card Investor app, we track hundreds of parallels and variations across all different types of cards to give you a visual understanding of all of the different ones you're looking for and how valuable each one of them can be. And when you're opening up cards, take your time, because sometimes it's actually difficult to even detect if you might have an image variation or a parallel of a certain card. So take your time when ripping, pay attention, and don't miss what might be a very valuable card in your pack. We're going to talk about autograph cards and memorabilia cards in just a moment, but it's worth noting that sometimes parallels can be combined with autograph cards and or memorabilia cards. So for example, you might have a rookie patch autograph of a player that is a parallel version of their base rookie patch autograph, which may mean that it is low numbered or features a color variation of that patch autograph card. Next, let's talk about inserts. Inserts are traditionally themed subsets of the overall product that are different designs than the traditional base card. And while many inserts are there simply to break up the designs throughout the set, some are super short printed and are extremely valuable. You've probably heard of the Kaboom, or the Color Blast, or the Downtown, or the Home Field Advantage, or the Helix, or the Alter Ego. These are all very sought after inserts that are rare and can also be very valuable. Now, sometimes these insert cards can also feature their own parallels. For example, the Gold Kaboom, serial number to 10, is a parallel of the Kaboom insert and is extremely pricey when you find one. Next, let's talk about autograph cards. Now, many collectors love to get cards autographed. Some will take base cards and will try to track down athletes to have them sign cards in person. But what we're going to talk about here is the cards that actually come out of the pack with the autograph already on it. And of that, there are two different types: on-card autographs and sticker autographs. And there's a big difference between these two types. On-card autographs is where the card was actually held by the athlete and the athlete directly signed the card. This is the most desirable type of autograph for two reasons. First of all, they were actually held by the athlete. And second of all, these are considered to be aesthetically more appealing than the other type of autograph card, which is sticker autograph cards. Sticker autograph cards are generally less popular and generally less valuable because in these cases, the athlete actually signed a clear sticker or a sheet of clear stickers, and then that sticker with the athlete's autograph on it was placed on the card after the card was manufactured. People generally don't feel that sticker autograph cards look as good visually, and they were never held by the athlete, so for those reasons, they're typically a little bit less sought after. Next, let's talk about memorabilia cards. You may have heard of patch cards or relic cards. Well, those are different types of memorabilia cards where a patch or a piece of a player's jersey was put inside a card. You can also have pieces of a bat, or pieces of a ball, or pieces of a glove, or pieces of a cleat, or some other type of material associated with the player put into a card to make for a memorabilia card. But there are three different, very distinct types of memorabilia cards, and this is something you definitely need to be familiar with because it affects the value and the popularity of a card quite a bit. The best type of memorabilia card is a game-used memorabilia card, where the card itself says this piece of memorabilia was from an actual game where the player wore or used that piece of memorabilia in the game. Those are most desirable because they were used in a game, and that makes them most valuable as well. The next level down is player-worn memorabilia. If you see on a card that a piece of memorabilia was player-worn, that means that the player put on that jersey or used that memorabilia item, but likely not in an official game. They may have just, for example, put on several different jerseys during a photo shoot, and then those jerseys that they briefly wore during the photo shoot were then cut up and put into player-worn memorabilia cards. The lowest level of memorabilia card are cards that are not associated with a particular team, player, or event. This means that the memorabilia inside the card literally came off the rack at Dick's Sporting Goods or at the Fanatics store or something of that nature. The item in the card was never actually used by the player or worn by the player. So while it still looks super cool to look at and people like it because it looks cool, it generally isn't going to be as valuable because there isn't actually any association with the player who is on the card themselves. Now, the most valuable of all cards is often a combination of some of the different types of cards that I just mentioned. For example, for a rookie card for a player, if you get a rookie card that is a patch of the player's jersey and the player has autographed the card, and it is a low serial numbered parallel, such as a 1 of 1 or an out of 5, that card is often going to be one of the most valuable rookie cards ever created for that particular player. All right, now that we've talked about some of the different types of cards, let's talk about the different types of boxes and packs that you can find those cards in. Just about every sports card created came from a pack. And in fact, if you browse the aisles of a card shop like CardsHQ here, most of the cards that you're going to find on the shelf originally started with a collector ripping open a pack and finding that card inside. But opening up packs and opening up boxes is actually a little bit more complicated than it might seem because there's a lot of different types of boxes and you need to understand the difference between each. Now, there's two major categories, retail and hobby. Retail is what it sounds like. Those are the boxes that you will typically find in large big box retail stores, your Targets, your Walmarts, or your pharmacies or grocery stores. Whereas hobby boxes are typically sold directly from the manufacturer or in a hobby shop like your local card shop, like CardsHQ here in Atlanta, or Dave & Adam's Card World, or Blowout Cards, or Steel City Collectibles, or Midwest Cards. Those are also all other popular online hobby shop retailers that sell a lot of hobby shop products. When buying any type of box, check to see how many packs are in the box and how many cards are in each pack. It will often tell you that on the box itself. It's also important to check to understand what type of content you can find inside the box. Because, for example, a hobby box is often going to contain a different number of autographs and maybe a different number of parallels or inserts than what you might find in a retail box. Generally, the more expensive the box, the more types of specialty cards like the parallels and the inserts and the autographs that you can find inside that box. But that doesn't mean that the most expensive boxes are always your best investments. Sometimes people say that buying many more of the less expensive retail boxes versus a few of the more expensive hobby boxes will actually yield a better overall result in the total number of nice cards that you're getting out of them. Each product's a little bit different, so it's always good to understand the nuances between the different retail products and the different hobby products and what is in the particular box that you're looking at buying. Now, if you go into a Walmart or Target and look for sports cards there, you're gonna see a lot of different configurations of retail sports card products. The least expensive is often a value pack or a fat pack. This is a single large pack that contains more cards than a typical retail pack found inside a sealed box. But of course, it's just one pack. Next, you might find cello packs. Cello is slang for cellophane wrapping, and these typically contain 2 or 3 retail packs and sometimes a special pack with exclusive parallels. These have been popular among certain collectors for the exclusive parallels that you can find in these cello packs versus other types of retail configurations. Next, you might find a hanger box. This is a small box that is typically hanging on a display, hence its name, and these typically contain one large pack inside. They're typically similar to a value pack or a fat pack, but they are released in a box format. Next, you might find value boxes or blaster boxes. These are typically a popular but still price accessible box format that typically contains between about 4 packs and 10 packs per box. And some of these blaster boxes will guarantee a memorabilia card, or maybe you get certain types of parallels or inserts that are specific only to the blaster box format. Next up the list is the mega box. This is going to get a little more expensive than all the other ones that we just talked about. These typically contain their own types of exclusive parallels and they'll give you a little more in terms of better odds at getting some of the bigger chases. You might have better odds, for example, of getting an autograph in a mega box than you would in any of the other type of boxes that we've talked about. But of course, you're going to pay a little more for that as a result. And then finally, you might find retail boxes. Retail boxes are typically the most expensive of any of the retail products that I just mentioned, and they look the most like a hobby box, but they're not as expensive as a hobby box. These typically contain retail packs, meaning that your odds of getting a big card like an autographed or a low number parallel are still lower than those of hobby products, which you would pay more money from. But if you're shopping at a big box retailer and you want the best possible box that you can get with the best odds of giving you the best stuff, your retail box is probably where you're going to look. Now, one word of caution when buying packs or boxes at these big retailers is you do have to worry a little bit that other customers may have manipulated the packs or boxes. And this can happen from them either opening up a pack and taking some cards out and resealing it, or them sometimes even bringing a little scale and weighing some of the different packs and trying to find the one that's the most heavy, because they're going to assume that the one that's the most heavy maybe contains the memorabilia card or the card that's most desirable, even though that's not actually always the case. Generally, you're better off buying boxes rather than individual packs because it is less likely that the box will have been manipulated than the pack. But just in general, be careful whenever buying packs or boxes at a big box retailer. So now that we've talked about the different types of retail products, let's talk about the different types of hobby products. Now, hobby products are typically sold directly from the card manufacturer or through local hobby shops like CardsHQ or online retailers who specialize in trading cards. And the hobby box is the signature type of hobby product. The hobby box is typically the best point of entry for those who are looking for a better experience than retail products with a chance at getting the best types of cards, but doing so on a somewhat reasonable budget. Hobby boxes are typically the floor price of the different hobby products you can get, but they still give you the chance of getting the really, really high-end chase cards, the one-of-ones, the super short print inserts, the autograph cards, and the memorabilia cards. So if you're hunting for the best cards, hobby is typically your most affordable way to do that. And oftentimes you're better off buying a single hobby box than you may be buying a handful of retail products. But there are levels above a hobby box. For example, jumbo boxes. Sold by Topps, jumbo boxes are typically more beefed up versions of hobby boxes. They contain more cards than hobby boxes and more hits for a higher price. Often, for example, while a hobby box may guarantee you one autograph card inside the box, a jumbo box may guarantee you 3 autograph cards inside the box. But of course, that box is going to come at a higher price point than a hobby box. There's also a new type of box called Breaker's Delight. These boxes debuted a few years ago, and these are special boxes being put out by Topps. Despite the name, these boxes aren't exclusively sold to breakers. Anyone can buy one, but these boxes contain almost exclusively just hit cards, but only a very small number of cards. So Breaker's Delight boxes are typically a single pack of cards, maybe 10 or 12 cards, where every single card is at least a refractor or better, meaning you're going to get a lot of colored parallel cards and you're likely going to get autograph cards inside there as well. These are called Breaker's Delight boxes because they're most popular with breakers who like to rip through cards quickly on a live stream while their customers are watching the rips and buying their way into these breaks. And we'll talk a little bit more about breaking later in the show today. There's also a new configuration recently launched by Topps called the First Day issue, and this is similar to what Panini has put out in the past called First Off the Line. This is a variation of a hobby box that is often sold before the hobby boxes are officially released to the public. So if you want to get the very first box possible of a new set and get the very first opportunity to rip a new set, buying the First Day boxes or the First Off the Line boxes is your opportunity to do so. They're only sold typically, at first at least, on the manufacturer's website. So you buy them directly through Topps or through Panini. And they typically come at quite the premium price point. Much more expensive typically than hobby boxes, often more expensive than jumbo boxes. But they typically contain some special parallels or some special cards that those boxes don't, that give you some additional chase cards to help try to substantiate the higher price point. There are also a few other types of hobby products to be aware of. Topps and Panini sometimes come out with less expensive versions of hobby boxes that are sold in hobby shops, but are a little more watered down in terms of the content they contain. Topps sometimes calls these light hobby boxes. Panini calls these fast break boxes or similar. There's also international boxes, such as Tmall boxes that Panini sells through international resellers. Topps also has special releases for Japan, for example, that you can only get over there, even though you'll sometimes find them on the secondary market being resold in the US. So there's a lot of different types of boxes, but sticking with the basics, your basic hobby boxes or your basic retail boxes is often the best way to get started as a new collector. There's also a different type of box called a repack or a repack box that is not created by the card manufacturers, but instead is created by a hobby shop like CardsHQ or a popular online breaker, where they are actually buying individual single cards off the secondary market and repacking those inside a box product that they create. Now here at CardsHQ, we have a repack product called Graded Grails that we often break in our online breaks. There's a lot of other repack products out there as well. Some collectors prefer repack products because you're often getting a good card inside. You're often getting one card of a known player, often a popular set and a popular parallel or a popular insert that people love to chase. But be careful, because not all repacks are created equal. Sometimes repacks can be manipulated by the company that is creating the repack themselves, where the best hits that they're advertising that could be inside one of these mystery boxes doesn't actually ever make it into the mystery box, or maybe it does make it into one of the boxes, but that box is sold to a friend of the shop's. So be careful. Whenever buying a repack, we suggest looking for a repack that is third-party certified, meaning another company has certified that the repack was put together randomly and that every card that was advertised as being in that repack's checklist actually made it into a box. Here at CardsHQ, PSA certifies our repacks as PSA certified repacks to ensure that they offer a fair deal for our customers. Before we move on to talk about breaking and live selling, let me mention the investment aspect of sealed boxes. I used to be a very big proponent of buying sealed boxes like hobby boxes and keeping them sealed. Because if you think about it, a box in a sense is like a mutual fund of all of the different players that could possibly be inside that box, particularly all of the rookies. So if you buy a box from a particular year and a rookie from that product gets popular years down the road, the fact that you still have a sealed box that could contain that rookie's card could make that box very, very valuable on the secondary market. So my personal investment strategy in the past has been to buy large numbers of boxes and to keep them sealed. So I had a smattering of boxes from all kinds of different sports and all kinds of different years. However, there is more of a danger now with CT scanning technology, where if you're buying really high-end investment boxes, and I'm talking about boxes that will be thousands of dollars or more, some boxes have been CT scanned where people have used a CT scanner to see what cards are inside the boxes. So I would be a little bit careful about buying the highest end of sealed products and keeping those sealed for a long period of time for resale value, because I worry that the long-term resale value could be hurt by the CT scanning. Lower end boxes, I think can make pretty decent investment if you buy those and keep them sealed, because those are less likely ever to justify the cost of CT scanning. By the way, if you're looking to buy boxes or cards, check out CardsHQ.com, our website where we sell thousands of different cards and boxes every single day, and we take pride in pricing all of our cards and boxes at often the best prices you'll find anywhere on the internet. Check it out at CardsHQ.com. Next, let's talk about breaking and live selling. And you may have heard of the term breaking because breaking has become very popular in the sports card hobby in recent years. It is a big buzzword, but it's not as complicated as you might think it is. Now, what breaking really means at its core is just opening up a box of cards. That is breaking open the box. That's where the word breaking comes from. But what you probably heard about is what is called group breaks. So group breaks is a format where a group of people split the cost of a box, and then they use a set of rules to determine who gets what card that comes out of the box. The advantage of doing it this way is that the group of people, by splitting the cost, makes the entry point into the box a lot more affordable for every person. And of course, group breaks are often done online through apps like Whatnot or Fanatics Live or eBay Live, or even sometimes through YouTube pages or through Instagram or through Facebook groups or Discord servers. Now, there are different types of formats of breaks, so let me talk about what some of those are next. Team breaks are where each participant pays for a team in that break. So for example, if you're opening up a baseball box, you may get the Atlanta Braves. And that means that when the box is opened in the group break, every single card that comes out of the box from an Atlanta Braves player is shipped to you. That becomes your card. There's also player breaks. These are sometimes a little less popular because there's so many different players, but you can run a break or be part of a break where you can get certain players on the checklist. And then when that box is opened up, if any of the players that you have happen to come out of that box, those players' cards will be given to you. And both formats can either be randomly assigned teams and players, or pick your teams, or pick your player breaks. Random means that each person gets assigned a random team after paying the price to enter the break. So you buy into the break without knowing what team or what player you're going to get assigned to for that break. Where pick your team and pick your player breaks mean you buy the specific player or the specific team that you want. But you can often end up paying more that way because certain teams and certain players are naturally going to be sold at more expensive prices because those are the teams or players that are going to be the most sought after. There's also other formats, such as receiving a specific card in a single pack. So for example, you might buy into the break and you get card number 1 and another person gets card number 5 when they come out in order. Or sometimes you can even do serial number breaks where you might buy into a break that any card that happens to be serial numbered 33 comes to you, if that's the particular serial number that you get assigned. Breaking is a really big business for us here at CardsHQ. In fact, inside our store here in Atlanta, we have 6 different breaking studios where we have breakers opening up boxes for our customers all over the world who are watching our live streams and buying into our breaks all day and all night. We use Whatnot for a lot of our breaking, but we also break on Fanatics Live as well. And if you've never bought into an online break before and you would just like to check out what it's all about, I'm going to put a QR code on our screen and put a link in the show description below to our CardsHQ Breaks channel on Whatnot. And in fact, if you use that QR code or you use the link, thanks to our sponsor Whatnot, they're going to hook you up with $15 in free credit that you can use towards an online break. Personally, I find breaks to be tremendously entertaining, and I love just hanging out and watching the boxes be opened. So you might as well give it a shot. Scan the QR code or click the link, join one of the breaks, and just take a look around. See if you like it yourself. But I do want to issue a word of caution. While breaking can be fun, it can also be addictive. Some people take breaking a little bit too far. They start chasing, the big hit cards that they're really trying to go after, and they start buying into too many breaks, more breaks that they can probably reasonably afford. So just like any other form of entertainment, please do it for entertainment purposes. Set a budget. Don't go overboard. Breaking's a lot of fun, but you got to put some reasonable controls on yourself, especially if you're the type of person that sometimes compulsively likes to go a little bit overboard with things. Be careful with breaking because it can be that way for some. All right, I want to switch gears for a minute and talk about how to understand the value of cards. And this is critically important. Look, if you're going to be investing in sports cards, you are often far better off buying individual single cards than you are buying boxes to open or buying your way into these online breaks that I just talked about a moment ago. Opening up boxes and joining online group breaks is a ton of fun, and I do it often, but just for entertainment purposes. For investment purposes, you often get a lot further by buying the single cards you want instead of just opening up a box or buying into a break and getting whatever happens to come out of that box or out of that break. But when you are buying single cards, it's critically important to know what their actual market value is, because one way to get hurt when investing in sports cards is to significantly overpay, and a lot of newer collectors make that choice. If you go on a site like eBay, you're gonna see millions and millions of cards listed with different buy it now prices where you can buy those cards right away. But a lot of those cards are listed well over fair market value. So don't just click buy now on one of those cards without researching the price. And likewise, if you go to a local card shop or if you go to a card show, you may find that that dealer has their cards well overpriced. Not every card shop does, and not every dealer does. Here at CardsHQ, we put all of our cards right around market value, but there's a lot of card shops that don't do that. And there's a lot of dealers at card shows that don't do that, and they put a premium sticker price on all of their cards, hoping that somebody will simply overpay so they can get more profit. So be careful. The best way to know what the market value of a card is to use data, to use tools that help you understand market value. Now, a simple way to do this, a lot of people like going into the eBay app and they like to do a search on eBay and then filter to look at sold completed items on eBay, which then changes eBay's search view to show you what cards actually sold on eBay for recently. But a more comprehensive way of doing this is to use the free Sports Card Investor app that I told you about earlier in the video, because that app gives you 30 days worth of sales data for free on more than 5 million different sports cards. Or if you want to take it a step further, the Market Movers app, because the Market Movers app tracks the price of tens of millions of different cards and gives you a complete sales history from the last several years on all of those different cards. So if you're going to go to a card show, or if you're going to start buying cards online, apps like the Sports Card Investor app and the Market Movers app, as well as the eBay completed and sold listings, are going to be your best friend. Now, a word of caution. The last sale price of a card doesn't always mean that that is the exact right market value for a card. Sometimes what a card sold for last can be a weird outlier. Maybe it went really high, or maybe it went really low. And that can happen for a variety of reasons. A card can go really high because a player was really hot that day. If you had a baseball player who hit 3 home runs, or a basketball player that dropped 50 points that night, their card probably sold for a lot of money. But a week or 2 or 3 later, if they cooled back down, really their cards are probably worth a little bit less again. So if you're going off of one sale from the night when they were the hottest, that might have been an overpay. Or sometimes you have a collector who just doesn't really care that much about what price they're paying, and they want a particular card. They see it listed on eBay and they instantly hit buy now, and they're willing to overpay because they want that card. But that doesn't mean that future collectors are going to quite pay that same price. So if you see one really high card, you always have to be a little cautious. There's also nefarious reasons that people can implement that can make that sale look high as well. For example, if somebody shill bid a card up to a really high value, you may have a sale that's particularly high because the price was manipulated through shill bidding. And you have to be careful of that as well, because you don't want to pay a price that was artificially shill bid up by somebody else just because that happened to be the most recent sale record. Conversely, sometimes a card sells for very little, maybe because it was at auction and the auction ended at a really weird time, or maybe because the player was injured when the card went for sale and now the player is back healthy and playing well again, so their card should theoretically be more valuable than the last time it sold. So going off of the last sale price is a good guide, but it's not always the definitive answer. Ideally, you're going to look at several sales of the same card over time to get an idea of how the market has been trending. And ideally, you're going to look at maybe other cards of the same player or similar players from the same set and the same type of card, like the same parallel of another similar player, to get a sense of where their market is at. And that's going to help you make an informed decision. Again, an app like Market Movers, really, really great at helping you understand all of that. It's also, of course, important to look up sales in the particular grade or condition of card that you are looking at. So if you're looking to buy a card in PSA 10 condition, you're going to want to look at previous sales of that card in PSA 10 condition. If you're looking to buy a card in raw condition, then looking at the sales history of that card in raw condition can sometimes be a little bit tricky because the condition of raw cards can vary greatly. For example, maybe the copy of the card that you're looking at has some visible damage. Maybe it has a dinged corner, or a scratch on the surface, where maybe the last copy of that card that sold raw was a perfect looking copy with no damage. In that case, the card that you're looking at with a little bit of damage should be less valuable than the last copy that sold that looked perfect. So if you're buying a raw card, not only do you have to look at sales history, but you also have to look at the photos of each of those sales to get an understanding for the condition, to ensure that whatever card you're about to buy, you're pricing that card at a similar price to what it should be condition-wise based upon what previous cards in a similar condition have sold for. Now, in buying single cards, buying cards of retired all-time great players is typically your safest bet, because there's less day-to-day that can often happen to fluctuate the value of those cards. Whereas if you buy cards from young players, rookies or prospects or players within their first few years that are playing now, those cards are likely going to fluctuate tremendously based upon a number of factors. Obviously, how that player is performing makes a tremendous difference in their card prices. A player who's on a hot streak is likely going to see their cards going up. A player who's in a slump is likely going to see their card values going down. Likewise, the performance of their team makes a difference. A good player on a really bad team is probably not going to get as much attention in the sports card market as a good player who's on a really good team, with that team having a chance of doing something in the playoffs. Time of the year also makes a big difference when it comes to card values. Typically, you see the value of cards really surge right as you get into the beginning of a season. In fact, often the 30 days leading up to the sports season can sometimes be the hottest time of the year for that particular sports card. So for example, baseball cards are very hot in February and March, and football cards are very hot in July and August as you're leading into the season. Then as you get near playoff time, you often see another surge of the values of the cards for the players in the playoffs, particularly the players whose teams have a good chance of winning the championship. And if a player is performing well throughout the playoffs, expect their cards to go up and up and up. We commonly will see that happen for the best players in a historic playoff run. But once the offseason comes around, most players' cards will drop. Sometimes even the players that won the championship will see their cards drop as you go into the offseason. So often, if you're trying to find the best, most affordable time to buy a particular card with the best chance of it going up, oftentimes it's maybe about a month or two after the season ends. That gives you your best buying opportunity. So for example, if you want to buy baseball cards, you're often best buying baseball cards in late November, early December, when everyone's paying attention to football and basketball. That's your opportunity to typically snipe some baseball cards for a really good value. In addition to seasonal norms, there are also key benchmarks that can also cause a player's prices to rise or fall. For example, winning a major award like an MVP award, or getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, or even the death of a player can drastically cause that player's card market to rise in price, as more casual collectors are suddenly paying attention to that player's cards and maybe buying them as a memory of the player or an opportunity to capture a piece of the moment by buying that player's trading cards. Also, when a baseball prospect in the minor leagues gets called up to the major leagues, their cards often soar. Or when a college player gets drafted high in the draft, they'll often see their cards go up as a result. But they then have to perform. Because if a prospect gets called up to the majors and then they struggle in their first 10 or 20 games, be ready for their cards to fall, and fall hard. So whenever you're buying those modern cards, those ultra modern cards of players playing today, and in particular the rookies and the prospects and the players who were just recently drafted, it's volatile. It's hard to make money. There's a lot of players that you will lose on, and then there hopefully will be some players that you win big on as well. But understand, when buying, when investing in the cards of young players, you are taking a risk, and it is a risky business. If you're more of a play it safe, I want to hold on to a card for the long term, then buy cards of retired all-time greats. That's going to be your safest bet. It's not as exciting. The cards are not as volatile. There's likely nothing that's going to cause them to double in price overnight, but you have the safety and security of also knowing that there's likely nothing that's going to cause them to drop by 80% overnight either. One last tip when pricing cards. Sometimes you can't find a recent comp of a particular card. For example, if you have a very rare card, like a 1 of 1 or an out of 10 that you're looking at buying, it may be hard to find a recent sale of that card. Or if it's a brand new card, which just came out, that somebody just ripped out of a pack from a brand new set yesterday, maybe the card has never sold before. So how then do you understand the market value? Well, then you kind of have to do a little bit of triangulation by looking at the market value of other types of similar players or similar cards, either from this year or maybe even from previous years. So often you're going to draw an analogy between players. For example, if you're looking at a rare 2020 rookie card of Joe Burrow that hasn't had any recent sales, you might think about the other quarterbacks from 2020, like a Jordan Love or a Justin Herbert or a Jalen Hurts, and see if you can find that same card in one of those players that has also recently sold. You can then look at the price difference for more common cards. What does a more common Joe Burrow rookie card sell for compared to that same exact Jordan Love rookie card or Justin Herbert rookie card or Jalen Hurts rookie card, to understand the market difference between Joe Burrow and those other players? And you can then apply that same percentage difference to the rare card that you're then trying to price out. So there's ways like that, looking at sales from previous years, looking at sales from similar players, that can help guide you to the price of what a particularly rare card should maybe be reasonably priced at. And if you want to go a lot deeper with that subject, we've done a lot of great videos in the past on that. In fact, we have a different YouTube channel called the Market Movers YouTube channel, where one of my colleagues, Teapot, Tyler Nethercott, does a lot of videos about sports card data. And he's done some videos on there where he's talked at length about how to price very rare cards with no comps. So if you're into that, or you just want to learn about more about pricing cards and sports card data, go check out that Market Movers YouTube channel. All those videos are free for you to watch and consume. Okay, so now that we've talked about how to price cards, you might be itching to start buying some, but where should you actually buy cards? Because there's dozens of different places to choose from. I'm going to cover a few of the most popular and most trusted places that you can buy cards. And of course, the first thing to decide is, do you want to buy cards in person or online? There are pros and cons to both. I love buying cards in person because you can actually see the card and inspect the card, and that can be particularly helpful, especially if you're trying to buy a card in raw condition, to see what the condition of the card is like. And of course, you get the interaction with the dealer or the card shop owner or the other collector to get to talk about the cards and get to educate yourself along the way. But buying online gives you the opportunity to browse a much more vast selection of cards. So honestly, both are great choices. I buy in person a lot, and I buy online a lot as well. Now, if you're looking to buy in person, the most basic place to start is at your local card shop. If you have a card shop near you, that's a great way to go. Local card shops like CardsHQ are a low-stress way to explore cards in person, and often there's staff there that is going to be very friendly and is going to help guide you through the process. And of course, local card shops often contain a nice selection of single cards as well as sealed products. So if you want to get some boxes, you can pick them up while you are there as well. Now, as I said earlier in the show, be careful though, because not all local card shops price their cards at recent market value. Some, like CardsHQ, do. Others will sticker their cards at 20, 30, or 50% or more over the most recent sale, expecting some negotiation. So when you go into your local card shop, make sure to check out their prices and then do a little bit of price research on your own using some of the tools that we talked about earlier in this video to ensure that you are buying your cards at a fair deal that is representative of the current market price on that card. Card shows are another great place to go buy cards in person. In fact, going to a card show is one of my absolute thrills, one of my absolute favorite things to do as part of the sports card hobby. And I would absolutely highly recommend everyone watching go to a card show and get the opportunity to browse the card show and see what different cards are out there, talk to all of the different dealers. It's really a great part of the collecting experience. Now, of course, card shows vary in size and scope a ton. You may find that there are local card shows near you that are small, that might have 30 dealer tables or 40 dealer tables. Maybe they're in a ballroom at a small local hotel. And then there's larger regional shows, which may have hundreds of tables. And then there's the super large national shows like Fanatics Fest and the National Sports Collectors Convention, which have an unbelievable array of many, many hundreds, sometimes even 1,000 or more different dealer tables at those shows, a dazzling array of different cards to deal with. But no matter what card show you go to, chances are you're going to have a great experience. And in fact, going to a variety of the different sizes of shows is a great way to go. If you're looking for a local card show near you, there are some online resources that will show you card shows in your area. In fact, even our sportscardinvestor.com website has a card show locator on it that is worth checking out to see what card shows might be happening in your area. If you want to go to more of a regional show, look at shows like the Dallas Card Show or the Philly Card Show or the West Coast Card Show. These are all big regional shows that will typically draw thousands of collectors to the show. There's several others as well, but those are some of the more notable ones to be aware of. And then if you ever get the chance to get to that National Sports Collectors Convention or Fanatics Fest, expect to be there with maybe about 150,000 other collectors attending those events, which make the trade nights unbelievably epic. Those are definitely shows worth going to if you can ever make it there. Another place to shop for cards in person is your local big box retailer. Your local Target or Walmart, for example, are good places to find retail products, your less expensive products that we talked about earlier in the video, like the fat packs or the blaster boxes. But of course, those big box retailers, they're not going to sell any hobby products, and they generally don't sell much in the way of supplies either. So if you're looking for those things, you're better off going to your local card shop or a card show. Now, the other major way to buy cards is to buy them online. And searching for cards online is where the scope of the hobby really explodes. There are tons of different marketplaces, both big and small, and auction houses of all sizes that sell a huge variety of sports cards. And of course, the largest by far is eBay. eBay has typically been considered to be the go-to and largest marketplace for collectors. A lot of people like to start on eBay with any type of search, and I would recommend browsing eBay just to look at the selection of cards, put in your favorite player, put in your favorite set, put in your favorite parallel or insert, and chances are you're going to find a ton of different options on eBay. But eBay is not the only marketplace or online auction house that has a lot of cards for sale. Fanatics Collect has become increasingly popular as a competitor to eBay. Recently, they've got a lot of fixed price listings as well as a lot of auctions that take place on there. Golden is popular. Of course, Ken Golden brings a lot of publicity to Golden auctions. Heritage Auctions has a lot of really great auctions if you're looking for older stuff, especially. Heritage has a lot of really cool vintage stuff. Sotheby's even has very, very high-end auctions of sports cards and memorabilia occasionally. Pristine Auction is one that I like and that sponsors some of our content here at Sports Card Investor. You've got others like REA and Mile High and SCP and Memory Lane and others as well. And you've got other marketplaces. Check out My Cards is a popular marketplace for buying low-end cards. You've also got buysportscards.com and MySlabs and MyCardPost. There's a lot of different marketplaces for cards. And then there's some sites like Arena Club, which offer both single cards for sale, and they also offer digital repack products where you can buy one of the repacks that I talked about earlier in the show, but a digital version of it where when you open it up digitally on your screen, but it represents a physical card that actually gets added to your vault. Arena Club, by the way, is our title sponsor here of the Sports Card Investor Studio, and they're definitely worth checking out. And in fact, Arena Club has a special offer just for those watching the video today. Promo code SCI is going to give you 20% off your first purchase on Arena Club's website. So if you want to go to Arena Club to buy a single card through one of their auctions, or if you want to buy one of Arena Club's slab packs, which is their digital repacks product, you can do it and save 20% by entering promo code SCI at checkout, either on arenaclub.com or through the Arena Club app. In addition to auction houses and marketplaces, there's also a lot of card shops that have their own websites where they sell a lot of cards and boxes online. Of course, I've already mentioned CardsHQ.com. During this show, we've got a big selection on there. There's also Dave and Adam's Card World, Blowout Cards, Steel City Collectibles, and Midwest Cards amongst the most popular of the online retailers. Finally, a lot of cards are bought and sold through social media. There's thousands of different buy-sell trade groups on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, and on Discord. And these can sometimes be great places to find good deals because you're buying from collectors directly instead of buying from an auction house or a marketplace that is likely charging some type of fee or commission. But be very careful because there's also a lot of scams that take place on these platforms. If you're buying a card off somebody on one of those platforms, it's critical to pay using PayPal's goods and services or another type of payment method that has buyer protection insurance. Don't ever use PayPal Friends and Family, or don't ever send money via some type of app that doesn't offer you buyer protection insurance. Because if you get scammed and the person you're buying the card from either doesn't actually send you the card or sends you some other card that you didn't buy that's less valuable, you don't have any recourse unless you used one of the services that gives you buyer protection insurance. And make sure to check the terms of that insurance to ensure that it will in fact refund you on a sports card or trading card purchase. There are a lot of scams out there. Be careful and make sure to do things the right way. So now that you know some of the places where you can buy cards, the question is, how can you get the best deal possible? And I want to help you with that. I want to make sure that when you're out there buying sports cards, that you are getting good deals on those card prices so that you're having a good experience. And hopefully, if you want to sell those cards in the future, you're making some money when doing so. And the first tip that I can give you in this regard is to know and understand the market data. Now, I've already talked in this episode about how you can look up the recent sales price of cards, and understanding that data, having that data with you is going to be critically important. That's the first step to getting a good deal, because if you don't understand the price history of a card, then you can't possibly get a good deal because you don't know what that card should be worth in the first place. So know your data. And of course, I've mentioned apps like Sports Card Investor and the Market Movers app that are going to help you on that journey. Having that data puts you in the prime position to negotiate with the dealer or the seller, whoever's trying to sell that card. And negotiation is very important in the world of sports cards. Most dealers, not all, but most dealers will negotiate with you on what they have their cards priced at. Most dealers at card shows especially will do this, and some card shops will do this as well. Even a lot of online sellers will negotiate with you. In fact, eBay, within eBay's platform, gives you the ability on a lot of listings to make an offer, where you can put an offer on a card that is lower than the listed sale price. So negotiating or haggling when buying a card is often expected and routine. Now, there's some exceptions to that. For example, here at CardsHQ, we actually don't negotiate because we price all of our cards at the recent comp, at the recent market value. We will adjust the price of a card if somebody points out that the market has changed significantly since we originally priced it. But otherwise, we tend not to negotiate. But honestly, we're a little bit more of the exception than the rule. And whether a dealer will or won't negotiate, chances are they're never going to be offended by you making an offer. Even if someone comes into CardsHQ and tries to negotiate, we're not offended, because that's a common thing in the sports card world. So be ready wherever you go, card shops, card shows, or even online buying, be ready to negotiate. And of course, you're going to be most effective if you're offering based upon recent sale prices. Now, you can try to buy cards for a percentage of the most recent sale. You can try to buy cards, for example, at 85 or 90% of what it sold for last. And your argument for doing that to the dealer is that if they were to have sold the card online, like if they were, for example, to sell the card on eBay, they're going to be paying fees that could be upwards of about 13 or 14% in fees for selling the card online. So if they sell you the card in person at 90% of the most recent sale value, they're probably getting slightly more than the actual total they would receive after fees of selling that card online. Some dealers have the philosophy that they want to move and turn over their card inventory quickly. Some dealers have the philosophy that they make the most money by buying cards and then selling them quickly and then buying more cards and selling it quickly. Those are the ones that are most likely to negotiate with you, and they may actually sell you cards below the most recent sale price online. But there's a lot of other dealers that just simply don't want to go that low with their cards. They want to make a profit margin on every single card that they sell of a certain amount, and therefore they're often not really going to go below what the last sale price was. So in general, if you're able to buy cards around what the last sale price was, in general, you're probably getting a pretty fair deal. Now, if your intention is to immediately try to flip those cards for profit, then that's probably not good enough. Then you probably need to buy cards below the last sale price. In that case, maybe you should consider setting up at a local card show as a dealer and then offering to buy cards off of people that come up to your table, put up a now buying sign. That might give you the opportunity to buy cards off of people there at a lower percentage of the recent sale price. But it really just depends on what your motivation is. If you're trying to flip cards quickly, the price you pay is important. But if you're buying cards to build your collection, or these are investment pieces that you plan to hold onto for a long period of time, then trying to get cards priced at under comps probably doesn't need to be a priority, because you're probably going to miss out on a lot of really good cards by trying to negotiate that low. Simply buying around market value might be your more reasonable approach in that respect. But regardless of what your approach is and what you're buying your cards for, being respectful and making a respectful offer to the dealer, never considered to be a bad thing. Always something you should try to do as long as you have a good dialogue and you're professional about doing it. And by the way, if you're buying cards in person, cash is king. Another tip that I have for you is ideally bring cash to the card show or the card shop. In fact, a lot of dealers will give you discounts if you're willing to pay in cash, or they may not even accept digital payment services at all. So cash is always going to get you the best deals when you are trying to buy cards. But of course, be careful of your personal safety when carrying cash, because there have been some incidences at card shows of robberies and everything like that as well. So always be safe and always be prudent. Now, whenever you are buying cards, make sure that the deal of what you're getting isn't actually too good to be true, because unfortunately, there are a lot of scammers in the sports card world, and they may be trying to find a way to scam you. There are fake cards. There are even fake slabs. You have to be careful for that stuff. If a deal seems too good to be true, if someone's trying to sell you a card at half of its most recent sale price, for example, chances are you're either about to buy a fake card or you're about to pay somebody and not actually get the card in return at all, or maybe not the card that you think you were buying. You're buying some other variation of the card or something that isn't actually what you think you are getting. So be careful of who you are buying from. If you're not sure about a particular dealer, ask them for references, ask them for proof of other positive deals. But of course, even that won't necessarily, fully protect you from scams. So just always be careful and take the time to ensure what you're buying is the real thing. I always suggest that newer collectors buy graded cards whenever possible. And if you're buying a valuable card, any type of investment grade card, only buy graded cards, because there's a lot of fakes. There's many, many fakes out there. Buy a graded card and then take the certification number on the card, like for example, the PSA certification number, put it into the PSA app to make sure it comes up as a real card, and make sure that the photos of the card match the photos of the card that you are looking at. So it's the exact same copy of the card. And if the slab says it's a PSA 10, look at the card inside to make sure it really looks like a PSA 10 and it wasn't a situation where someone cracked open a slab and swapped the card out or something of that nature. There's also tips for ensuring that the slab is now not counterfeit. You can look, for example, on PSA's website and it will give you tips on ensuring that the slab that you're buying is real as well, because there are some counterfeit slabs that have entered the market as well. So those are all things to be cautious of to ensure you're getting a good deal and not getting a bad one. One final tip. I mentioned the Sports Card Investor app several times in this video. The Sports Card Investor app actually makes it really easy to see the lowest available sales price on eBay for any particular card. So if you go into the Sports Card Investor app, click on a card, you can then go down to the section that shows the cards for sale. And you can even toggle between different grades and see what the lowest available sale price on eBay at that moment of that card is. We even give you a helpful indicator if the card is a particularly great deal, such as a green thumbs up or a great deal indicator. Also, within Market Movers, there is a Deals tab. And the Deals tab in Market Movers will actually compare the price on eBay of millions of cards to what the most recent sale of those cards were, and actually expose to you certain sellers that have their cards on eBay priced under market value. Next, let's talk about grading. Grading is possibly the biggest business in the trading card market outside of the manufacturing of the cards themselves. To maximize your collecting experience, it's critical to know the basics of grading, including the key grading companies in this space and how to grade cards on your own. So here's how to get started. First of all, why do people grade? A common misconception is that cards are graded simply to receive a number grade that assesses the card's condition. Well, that is a big part of grading, but that's not the only reason to grade. Also important is the authentication of the card itself and the encapsulation of the card. So major trading card graders authenticate cards as real before assigning a number grade for the card's condition. And then they encapsulate the card in a protective case. Those are both very important. And although the number grade can impact the card's secondary market value, sometimes tremendously so, the authentication process deems that the card is legitimate and not fake. And the encapsulation process protects the card for years to come and keeps it in the same exact condition. This is really important. As I mentioned earlier in the show, unfortunately, there are a lot of fake cards on the sports card market. You got to be careful of fake cards, and that's why I recommend buying graded cards, because the grading company authenticated that the card is real. If you are buying an iconic card, such as a Michael Jordan rookie card or a Mickey Mantle card or anything of that nature, please, only buy the card graded. Because there's so many fakes out there of those cards that if you buy an iconic card, especially an older one in raw condition, I can almost guarantee you're getting a fake. And you don't want to waste your money on a fake. So buying graded can be very, very helpful in that aspect. So how does a card get a grade? When you see a card in a graded slab with a grade on it, a number between 1 and 10, how did the grading company assess the condition of that card? What did they look at on the card to determine what grade the card deserved? Well, there are 4 elements of a card that a grading company is going to evaluate. And it's really important that you understand these 4 elements, because if you are looking to buy raw cards, or if you've pulled a card from a pack and you're trying to decide if it's worth grading that card or not, you want to look at these 4 elements yourself so that you can determine what the grading company is likely to grade the card. The first element they're going to look at is the card's centering. Now, the centering of a card is often the easiest to judge, particularly with a card that has a defined border around it. Ideally, the card image in the middle of the border is perfectly centered. And by perfectly centered, I mean not just left centered and right centered, but also top centered and bottom centered. So the border that goes around the edges of the card should be the same size on both the left and the right and on the top and the bottom. This is what is called 50-50 centering. 50-50 centering means that exactly the card image is exactly in the middle of the card. 50% of the card is to the left of the center of the card image, and 50% of the card is to the right of the center of the card image. And there's a little bit of room for error here. If a card is 55%, 45% centering, PSA, for example, still considers that good enough to give the card a PSA 10. But anything that's more off-centered than 55%, 45% is likely to get dinged in its grade because it is not perfectly centered. Now, there are cards without clear border designs, in which case centering becomes a little more difficult to track. So for example, with the Kaboom card, it's harder to tell, well, is this card centered or not? So you're actually going to look for elements of the background pattern on the card to ensure that the background pattern is perfectly centered on the card. Or sometimes you're looking at where the name is placed, and if there's equal space to the left and the right of the name, if the name is kind of floating in a box on the card. With each card design, it varies a little bit, but overall, you're looking for cards that have perfect centering. That's your path to getting a perfect gem mint grade. But centering is just one of the elements you're looking for. The next element is the corners. Each of the 4 corners of the card has to be sharp without any fraying or damage. And this is true both on the front of the card and on the back of the card. Flip your cards over, because sometimes the front of the card won't show any corner damage, but when you flip it over, you might see a tiny little crease or some other type of damage in one of the 4 corners of the card. Or you might see some white in one of the corners of the card, which typically occurs if that corner at any point was bumped or pressed down. And unfortunately, chances are your card is not gem mint. The next element of the card the grading company will evaluate are the edges. Just like the corners, the edges can show damage, and this will bring down the grade of the card. Now, edges are actually more heavily impacted on thicker cards, ones that feature memorabilia or specialty cards that are thicker. Because they have thicker edges, they're more likely to have some type of damage along the edge. So look at the edges closely for any types of dings, dents, or whitening that may be appearing on the edge of the card, because if you see that, unfortunately, that will take the card's grade down as well. The final element grading companies look at are the surface of the card. And unfortunately, surface damage is the hardest to spot. And it also can include manufacturer print lines and errors. Maybe nothing that even happened to the card after it was taken out of the pack, but the damage occurred when the manufacturer originally printed the card. And these are very common with ultra-modern cards. Cards with chromium finishes, unfortunately, can often have surface issues that can ding the grade of the card. Print lines are common. Surface scratches, surface dimples, these are all common damages to the surface of the card. You can see these best when you're looking at the card in a dark room under a bright halogen light and you're turning the card in every direction under that light. That's how graders are going to look at the card, and that's how you need to look at the card as well to see if you can see any type of damage before you submit it off for grading. It's also worth noting that certain design parallels, such as the mojo or shock pattern, are unfortunately known for having often heavy surface damage created during the print process. So some types of parallels, it's actually harder to get good grades on than others because surface damage is more common. So if you go through all of your cards now and you look at the centering and the corners and the edges and the surface, hopefully you find some cards in your collection that look absolutely perfect in all 4 of those areas. And hopefully it's a key rookie card or a big name player, and then maybe that is a card that you should consider grading. But the question is, where do you grade it? There's different grading companies. Which grading company should you send it to? Well, first, there's PSA. PSA is by far the largest and most popular card grader. They have by far the most market share of any of the different card graders, and PSA graded cards tend to have the most value on the secondary market. So PSA has become the go-to grader for most collectors with most different types of cards. Here at CardsHQ, we actually have a PSA submission center right in our store here in Atlanta, staffed by PSA's own employees. So if you ever happen to be in the Atlanta area or passing anywhere close to Atlanta and you have cards that you want to grade, The most efficient way to get those cards graded is to walk them into our shop at CardsHQ and hand them directly to the PSA employees who will take them from you, and they will start the process of processing those cards for grading. In addition to PSA, another very popular grading option is Beckett, known as BGS, Beckett Grading Services. They actually, if you go back a couple of decades, they were the #1 grader, more popular than PSA, and Beckett graded cards were more valuable than PSA. But in recent years, Beckett has fallen quite far behind PSA. However, in late 2025, PSA's parent company, Collectors, bought Beckett in a move that caused some controversy amongst a lot of collectors, because collectors are worried about one grading conglomerate owning most of the major grading companies, which Collectors now owns PSA and Beckett BGS and SGC, which we'll talk about in a minute. So that has some collectors' concern. But at the moment, Beckett is continuing to operate like an independent company. And one thing people like about Beckett is that they give subgrades on cards. This means that a Beckett graded card will give you individual grades for each of the 4 elements that I talked about earlier. They'll give you an individual grade for centering and for corners and for edges and for surface, whereas PSA just gives you one overall grade. Beckett will give you all 4 subgrades plus an overall grade. Some collectors prefer that. Now, Beckett's grading scale is a little bit different than PSA's grading scale. PSA's grading scale is 1 to 10, with 10 being a perfect gem mint card. Beckett actually gives a card rated a 9.5 its gem mint grade, but it also has 2 different 10 grades, a 10 pristine and a 10 black label, which are reserved for the most perfect copies of a card. A BGS 10 black label can be particularly valuable, oftentimes selling for a multiple over what a PSA 10 would be worth. And you see Beckett particularly popular in the TCG world, like Pokemon cards, because Pokemon cards are often printed with such perfection that getting more black labels is likely, and therefore getting more premiums on your cards going through Beckett over PSA is possible. Another grading company is SGC. They're based out of Florida. They have been best known for having their black slabs. It's kind of got a black outer layer around the card, which their fans call tuxedo slabs because of kind of the black and white look of the label and the slab. Now, SGC was purchased a couple of years ago by Collectors, the parent company of PSA. And since that purchase, Collectors has scaled down SGC to just become more of a smaller boutique grading company, mainly specializing in vintage cards. That's historically what SGC has been known for. Then there's CGC. CGC has been making more waves in the trading card industry recently. Their history is in comic grading and coin grading, but they got into sports and trading card grading a few years ago, and they are starting to capture more market share, particularly with TCG cards such as Pokemon cards. But many people like CGC's holders, and they believe that CGC has a lot of future potential in the market. There's also other grading companies like Tag, which is an AI-based grading company. They've been around for a few years. They still have not been able to capture much market share, particularly in the sports card market. But the idea of AI grading intrigues a lot of collectors, so there's a lot of people that still want to give them a try. There's other grading companies, for example, Arena Club, which I mentioned earlier in the show. In addition to being a marketplace and an online seller of slab pack repacks, Arena Club also offers card grading as a service as well. And there's a number of other card grading companies as well that tend to be smaller. But if you're looking to grade a card with a company that's going to get you the best value in the secondary market, you often want to go with one of the larger companies, and in particular PSA, because of their dominant position in grading at the moment. Now, grading raw cards can actually be one of the best ways to make profit in the sports card space. If you take a raw card and you grade it with one of the major grading companies and it comes back with a gem mint grade, chances are that that card with that gem mint grade is now quite a bit more valuable than it was when that card was raw. Oftentimes somewhere between 2 and 4 times more valuable in a gem mint slab than it was when the card was raw. So of course, you can see the math there. If you were to buy a raw card for $100, grade it and it were to get, for example, a PSA 10, that card often is now going to be worth about $300, a 3x multiple in the sports card market. Now, of course, that multiple varies by a lot of different factors. I'm just giving you a general rule of thumb, but the general rule of thumb is that graded cards, gem mint, are more valuable and often considerably more valuable than raw cards. So there are a lot of collectors that make a good amount of money in the sports card space by buying raw cards that appear to be in really great condition and then grading those cards and then selling those cards after they are graded. Of course, in order to do that, you really have to develop a knack for evaluating a card thoroughly to ensure that it's got a good chance of getting the perfect gem mint grade. Because oftentimes, looking at PSA cards, for example, a PSA 9 of an ultra modern card will often sell for around the same price as a raw card. So if you were to buy some raw cards and grade them, and they were all get a PSA 9s, chances are you didn't make any money. In fact, you might have lost money because you paid for the grading fees to grade those cards, which is often between about $20 and $25 a card if you're submitting a lot of cards at the same time in bulk, or it can be even more if you're not. So you got to develop a good knack for it because you need to get those perfect gem mint grades. You need those PSA 10s because that's when you can make the multiple on your money. If you're going to buy raw cards for the purpose of grading, in my opinion, you're always better off buying them in person. When you buy cards online, you can't always see things like surface scratches. They may not show up in the online images of a card. If you can get a card in your hand, whether you're walking into a card shop or whether you're going to a card show or trying to buy cards off of another collector at a trade night, looking at that card closely in hand is going to give you the best chance to assess the card's condition. One more note about grading. The grading companies have what are called population reports, which tell you the total number of cards that have ever been graded and what grades all those cards have gotten for any particular card. This can be really important because if you're looking to figure out what cards are more rare than others, looking at population data can be very helpful. You might be surprised to find that a card that you think is very rare, maybe there's 500 or 1,000 copies of that card that exist in PSA 10 condition. Whereas another card that you didn't think was as rare, maybe only 20 copies of that card exist in PSA 10 condition. But although the population of a card is a guide as to its scarcity, it's not the end all be all because it may be that a lot of people just chose not to grade a particular card, particularly if you're dealing with a lower end card that's not super valuable. A lot of collectors may have that card in perfect condition, raw, but they may have just never chosen to grade it because they didn't think it was really a valuable enough card to grade. So just because a card is low population doesn't necessarily mean that it's rare in its raw form. And just because a card is low population doesn't necessarily mean that it's super valuable because the sports card market is driven by supply and demand. And while a low population card means there's low supply in that particular grade, it may also be the case that demand for that card is low. So just by having a low population doesn't necessarily mean that a card is particularly valuable. Throughout this video, we've given you some tips on how to invest in sports cards by making sure you're getting good deals and looking for graded cards and understanding what types of cards to buy. But I want to take a moment to talk about some tips specifically for investing, because if you are getting into cards because you're looking to flip cards for profit or you're looking for a long-term investment, there's a lot to understand and there's a lot to know. So let me give you a few more tips to help you on with your journey. The very first one is you have to understand what you're here for. Because if you are buying cards today because you want to sell those cards for a profit in 3 months or 6 months or a year, that's a lot different than if you are buying cards today because you consider those cards to be a great long-term hold and you're investing in an asset that will become a lot more valuable over the course of 10, 20, or 30 years. Those are two totally different strategies, and you should be buying two totally different types of cards. If you're more in it for the long term, if you're more in it to put money into an alternative asset to take those cards that you buy and to lock them away in a vault or a safe and to have some really valuable pieces that you believe and that I believe are going to be a lot more valuable 10, 20, 30 years down the road, then you really want to be looking almost exclusively to retired all-time great players. And really, it's the best of the best. I would encourage you to look at the GOATs. I would encourage you to look at a very short list of players for every sport. Who are the best 3 or 5 players ever to play a sport? Get those cards and ignore most of the other players, because it's really those all-time greats, and you're going to look for their iconic cards, their rookie cards, if you can afford them, and as high of a grade as possible that you can buy them in. Or if you can't afford a rookie card, then a second or third year card, or a card along the way that had maybe kind of an iconic design, graded, good quality. That's the card that you likely want to buy and lock up, because that's the card that likely is going to be your safest bet for appreciation over the course of 10, 20, 30 years. You have to think about, what are people really going to care about 30 years from now? I can't tell you today that if people are going to care about whatever rookie is hot in the moment. A few years ago, everybody thought Zion Williamson was going to be the next great sensational star. And people were buying up Zion Williamson, and they were buying up Ja Morant, and they were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their key rookie cards. And yet, neither may be relevant at all 30 years from now. When people think back upon the history of the sport, they may not even think of those guys 30 years from now. Unfortunately, their careers seem to be kind of going in that direction, right? But 30 years from now, people will be thinking about Michael Jordan. And they will be thinking about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. And they will be thinking, even though they're currently playing, I guarantee they will be thinking about LeBron James. And they will be thinking about Steph Curry. So even though those guys are playing, I'm much more comfortable with you investing in LeBron James and Steph Curry and great players like that than taking the chance on the new up-and-coming rookie. Even a player like Victor Wembanyama, who I love tremendously, and I think Victor Wembanyama is going to go on and have a sensational career, buying his cards today is a huge risk. A huge risk. Because as we sit here at the beginning of 2026, we have no idea if he's going to remain healthy, ever make it to a championship, ever win a championship, ever win an MVP, have a good career. We hope all those things will occur. We think all those things will occur, but you never know. But we do know that LeBron has rings, that Steph Curry has rings, that Michael Jordan has a lot of rings. And we do know that if we buy their cards and sit on their cards, chances are they will be more valuable in 20 or 30 years. And the same is true with every sport. You know, if you want to buy Tom Brady and maybe Patrick Mahomes, although even with him, there's a little bit more risk and volatility with how the rest of his career will turn out. Tom Brady, less risk and less volatility. John Elway, less risk and less volatility. Walter Payton, less risk and less volatility, because we know how their stories have been written. Ken Griffey Jr., Derek Jeter, great players to consider. And of course, you can go all the way back in vintage, you know, through the decades as well, and go back to the days of Mickey Mantle or Wilt Chamberlain or Jim Brown and buy those cards as well. Those are going to be your best long-term investing cards. But not everybody's into that. And I understand the excitement and the rush that comes with buying a card of a new player today and then seeing that card double in price in the next 3 months, because that does happen. That happens all the time. If you watch our top 5 card show here on the Sports Card Investor channel every week, we're talking about cards that have gone up 50%, 100%, 200% or more over the last 30 days. So it happens all the time, but it's much more of a risky type of investing. Some would say that really it's more speculating than investing. I think it's a form of investing, but it's a form of high risk investing. Just know what you're into and go in that direction, because those are 2 different paths you can go down. And it's okay to go down both, but just be aware that one path is more safe and more secure, less volatility, but also less short-term upside. That's the path of going for the all-time greats. The second path is going for the rookies or the young players who you think are going to double in the next couple of months because they're going to have an outstanding performance or win a championship or win an award or one of those types of things. Those are two different paths. The in-between often makes a difficult investment. The guys who are the good but not all-time great players, maybe even very good, maybe even Hall of Famers, but not remembered in the same category as your all-time greats, those guys, they can be not the most fruitful investments over the years because their names can start to be forgotten a little bit. So you really want, if you're going for the long term, you really want the guys whose names can never be forgotten because of the degree to which they've achieved and the stamp that they have put on their sport overall. By the way, when you're picking players, particularly in the category of the younger, players, the ultra-modern players for the quicker flips, it's not just about what the player is doing on the court. It's about how they're doing it. How many highlights are they showing up in? How much hype is built around them? And what's their off-court presence like as well? Are they likable? Are they funny? Are they memorable? Those things actually do play into card values. Hype is a big deal. In the NBA, the player with the spectacular dunks and the player who's shooting the three, their cards are likely going to perform a lot better than the big center who's playing great defense and maybe a all-pro player, an all-star, but isn't doing the spectacular things that are getting them on SportsCenter every single night. In baseball, the big home run hitter, they're likely getting on SportsCenter and getting the highlights, and their cards are more likely to maybe see a spike than the utility middle infielder who's incredibly solid defensively, but isn't hitting the ball out of the park 50 times a year, right? Again, who's getting on the highlight reels? Those are the players with the hype around them that are often moving the needle. In football, quarterbacks first and foremost. Quarterbacks more than any other position by far. Sometimes wide receivers, occasionally running backs, but for the most part, quarterbacks in football are really the cards you're chasing because those are the ones that are most likely to have the ability to really spike up in price. So that all matters. The player matters, the position matters, the hype matters, the off-court presence matters, and then of course, the particular type of card that you're investing in matters as well. I recommend, I've talked about it before, rookie cards, and ideally the big brand, and ideally a low-numbered parallel or a short print case hit, insert, something of that nature, something that's going to be desirable. That's really what you're going after. And of course, if you're going for vintage, there's very few choices of a player's cards, right? But if you're going for ultra modern, there's thousands of choices of a player's cards. If you're going for ultra modern and you're thinking about flipping, you've got to think about liquidity. What that means is the ability to easily sell out of a card. If you get a card that is not from one of the most popular sets, or if you get a card that doesn't transact very often on the sports card market, you may have a more difficult time selling that card because the person you're wanting to market it to sell it to, they may not be as familiar with the card, or they may go to look up recent sales of that card and see that the card hasn't sold in a while, and they may be nervous and not feel like they know what to offer you for your card or what the real market value should be. So I actually suggest against buying like one-of-one cards or cards that are from kind of different types of sets, or cards that are not just like the ones that are clearly the best parallels from the best sets or the best inserts that people are pursuing. Because if you buy a card that's not that, you're probably going to have a little bit of a harder time finding a buyer because there's not going to be as much liquidity because the buyers aren't going to be as familiar with the card. So that's something you've got to think about as well. The liquidity of a card is really important if you're going to be buying for the purpose of reselling in 3 months, 6 months, a year, something of that nature. Stick to the most popular sets, the most popular parallels, the most popular inserts, etc. Now, if you want to learn many, many more tips about how to buy cards for investment or for flipping for profit, I cover that topic often on a different YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel called The Geoff Wilson Show. It is also a podcast. They're longer format episodes, and I talk a lot about topics such as the best opportunities for investment and for flipping. So make sure to subscribe to The Geoff Wilson Show here on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify so you can hear a lot more tips for investing in cards. So we've talked about how to buy cards and how to invest in cards, but at some point you probably want to sell your cards as well, because whether you're looking to make a profit on your cards or simply sell some cards to get some cash to move into larger cards to upgrade your collection, selling cards is an important part of the collector journey. There's a lot of different ways you can sell cards. So one of the easiest ways is to sell cards in person. So just like how I've talked about how you can go to card shows to buy cards, you can also go to card shows and set up as a dealer. And oftentimes this is inexpensive and easy to do, especially at a local card show. If you're going to a local card show in a local ballroom in your hometown at a hotel, it's probably $50 to get a table, $75 to get a table at that card show. And you can sit there for the day, put your cards out, and sell your cards to people who come to the card show. It can be a little bit harder to get a table at a larger regional show. And of course, they're also going to be more expensive. Sometimes those shows are sold out and the dealers have sometimes locked up all of those tables months or years in advance. But local card shows is an easy way to set up and sell in person. Of course, you can also go to your local card shop. A lot of card shops will buy cards off of collectors. We constantly are buying cards every single day here at CardsHQ. That's one of the easiest ways to cash out of your cards or cash out of your collection. If you've got a bunch of cards and you're just looking to sell all or some of them, walk into a card shop that buys cards and let them make you an offer and see what the offer comes back at. You can also sell cards to other collectors in person at trade nights. Obviously, check with the venue to make sure that they allow you to actually sell cards there. But if it's a big trade night, you will often find people selling cards at trade nights as well. So that can be an opportunity to sell cards. And of course, just like when you're buying cards, when you're selling cards, expect negotiation. Understand the price history of your card and know what you're willing to sell your card for and what you're not willing to sell your card for so that you make sure that you get a fair value for whatever you're trying to sell. Now, of course, selling in person is just one route. Much like buying cards, you can also sell cards online. eBay is a huge place where many collectors go to sell cards, just like many collectors are there to buy cards. And you can put your cards up for auction on eBay, or you can list them at a fixed price and you can choose to even receive offers. Now, if it's your first time selling on eBay, I actually recommend using a consignment service. It's gonna take a lot of the work away from you, and you often even get better pricing by using an eBay consignment service because those consignment services sell tens of thousands of cards on eBay and they've negotiated better rates with eBay than what you get trying to sell cards on your own. DC Sports 87 is a popular consignment service. 4 Sharp Corners is a popular consignment service, and AMT Memorabilia is a popular consignment service, all of whom I've checked out and suggest and recommend. Those would be ones that you could check out. Also, Probstein, another popular one that a lot of people use as well. In addition to eBay, you can also sell your cards on other marketplaces like Fanatics Collect or ComC. Those are a couple of great places to check out as well. And then of course, if you have very valuable cards, you may want to sell them at one of the big auction houses like Golden or Heritage. Those are great places to auction very high-end valuable cards if you happen to have those in your collection. And then of course, there's social media. Just like how many people buy cards on social media, a lot of people are selling cards on social media as well, and you can do the same. There's a lot of different Facebook groups for selling your cards, a lot of Discord servers that allow you to sell cards, as well as Instagram and X can be popular platforms for people to sell cards as well. Of course, know who you're dealing with. Make sure you are getting paid before you send anything. Make sure you're not subject to any type of weird scam, because that can happen regardless of whether you are buying or selling cards. So of course, always be careful. Okay, we've covered a ton of ground in this video, but honestly, we're just getting you started because the sports card world is vast, and learning all about it is honestly one of the most fun things about the collecting experience. Even me, who's been doing this for many years, I'm still learning new things about sports cards and seeing cards that I've never seen before almost every single day. So keep learning. It's a very rewarding journey, and I promise you, a lot of this stuff may seem a little complicated now, but once you're in it for a little while, going to card shows, going to card shops, buying some cards on eBay, selling some cards in Facebook groups, once you start doing it, you're gonna learn it really quickly. You're gonna make some mistakes along the way, so be careful. Don't overextend yourself. Don't buy anything too big or right at first. You'll make some mistakes, but you'll learn so much and you'll love the process of learning. And before you know it, you will become a sports card expert. And to help you get there, don't forget about the resources that I mentioned throughout the show. If you haven't downloaded it yet, download that Sports Card Investor app that's totally free. Consider subscribing to Market Movers, our premium data tool to get the full price history and collection tracking, a great resource, and get that Sports Card Investing and Collecting for Dummies book, which will cover all of the topics that I talked about today in more detail. Sports Card Investing and Collecting for Dummies is available on Amazon and on CardsHQ.com. And speaking of CardsHQ.com, if you're ready to start purchasing some sports cards or boxes, CardsHQ.com is an excellent place to start, so check us out. Of course, you're ever in the Atlanta area, we'd love to have you visit CardsHQ as well, and hopefully by the time we update this video next year, we'll have a couple more CardsHQs open in other parts of the country. Thank you for watching our video today. We really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed to all of our YouTube channels, and we'll see you soon with more videos coming your way. Take care.